Okay, for questions 2 through 4, we're in Luke chapter 23. Luke chapter 23 records the crucifixion of Jesus. And question 2 is, while Jesus was on the cross, what temptation was he presented with 3 times? And number 3, question 3 says, what are some ways we face this temptation today? And finally, what can help us overcome as he did? The temptation that Jesus was faced with 3 times while on the cross can be found the first time in verse 37. Sorry, not verse 37, but verse 35. It says, the people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, he saved others, let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one. Verse 37, this is the soldiers speaking, and they say, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. And then the final time is in verse 39, one of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us. 3 times we find this same statement, save yourself, save yourself, save yourself. It comes out of different mouths, comes out in different contexts, but the same statement, the same temptation is for Jesus to save himself from the cross. And this temptation, in principle, we can broaden it to look at the idea of the will of God. We know in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus says, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. He submitted himself to the will of God. And the will of God for Jesus was to go to the cross and to stay on the cross. But the temptation here is to save himself from the cross, to get off of the cross, to effectively step outside of the will of God by his own ability, by his own means, and seek what's best for him of himself. And so some of the ways we face that temptation today are just in any way that we are in the will of God and we face difficulty because of it, and then we're tempted to step outside of his will. So a way that some people may face this temptation is you've been called to a job, you know particularly that God wants you to be with this employment, with this particular job. And in that job, you face challenges. In that job, you face difficulties that are making it inconvenient, that are making you suffer, that are making you have hardship. And the temptation that comes to you, just as the one that came to Jesus, save yourself from this. Why do you need to stay there? Why do you need to endure these hardships? Get off the cross. Come down from the cross. Save yourself from the cross. Another way is in relationships. Of course, I'm married, so I think of marriages first. If a person can be in a marriage, you know that God has called you to be in a marriage, and especially if you said I do before God, God has called you to be in that marriage, and he's with you to the end of it. But the temptation there, you're facing difficulties. Save yourself. Get out of this marriage. Get off the cross. Another place that we face this temptation is just in day-to-day activities, day-to-day things that cause difficulty as a Christian. We have to deny ourselves certain things. We can't go to certain places. We can't watch certain things. And the temptation is to save yourself from this suffering. Save yourself from this inconvenience. Get off of the cross. And these are the same principles. This is the same principle of the temptation that faced Jesus 3 times while on the cross. What do you think it was that helped him overcome, and what then can help us overcome? I think one thing that's explicitly stated in the Bible that helped Jesus overcome this temptation is this. It's found in Hebrews chapter 12, and it's verse 2. It says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, and here it is, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. He stayed on the cross. He didn't come off the cross, though he scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For Jesus, what kept him on the cross was the joy that was set before him, the joy that was on the other side of the cross, the joy after the cross. And what was that joy? Of course, many things came to Jesus as a result of staying on the cross, the resurrection, and the fact that he is set now at the right hand of God. But one thing as well that was, I believe, the joy that kept him on the cross is found in John chapter 12. This is John chapter 12 and verse 24. Jesus says, I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. So Jesus here is saying that the head of grain, the kernel of wheat, must fall to the ground and die so that it can produce many seeds. Because if it doesn't die, it's alone. And Jesus on the cross, before his death, he was alone. But in his death, he brings many sons to glory. In his death, he's the firstborn of the dead so that others may be resurrected from the dead and be glorified. And so I think this also was part of that joy that was set before Jesus that kept him on the cross. And also for us, part of the joy that can keep us on the cross and keep us in these things is that the glory that will be revealed in us. That's what Paul calls it. The present sufferings are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And that glory may be, yes, at the end when Jesus returns and we're glorified and with him, but also in this present life. Enduring hardship, enduring difficulty may be the way for God to get rid of some of those sins that we've been struggling with. That may be the way for him to develop character in us that we'll need to make it through more difficult trials in the future. It may just be character development just to bring us happiness. Maybe we're discontent with certain things in our life, and he takes us through some of these crosses to give us contentment so that we don't have to be so miserable or so unhappy because of the discontentment. But whatever it is, if it's the will of God for you, and that's the thing to make sure that every difficulty is not the will of God for us, but if it is the will of God for us, and if it is a cross that's coming from God, we can be sure that there's joy on the other side. There's joy in the resurrection. There's joy in the glorification. There's joy in the character development. There's joy that's on the other side. And just like Jesus, we can endure the cross, though despising the shame, because we know that there's that joy set before us.